Okay, good morning and welcome everybody. It's always great to meet face to face. We all have meetings by phone and by Skype, but getting together in the same room really enables the exchange of information and ideas and stories that make for a very strong collaborative group, and that's indeed what this is. So what I'm going to do is introduce some of the concepts that are currently being explored and are in various stages of development at the NIH, which is really designed to carry forward some of the original ideas of the BD2K initiatives. That is to really help the NIH and help the community to establish a digital data ecosystem. There are many ecosystems out there, but this is one that is particularly oriented towards the NIH and its constituent investigators and the institutes that have to deal with all of this enormous flood, one could almost say a tsunami, of big data and digital objects. So what I'm reporting on is really the work of many, many others, and I'm going to mention them as we go along here. So really to define what we're talking about is data commons. And this is really a framework. It's a framework that allows for the development of this digital ecosystem. And that's ultimately the goal that we're trying to move towards. So the framework is defined as a plug-and-play model, and it allows multiple participants. And the participants here are essentially all of the stakeholders and users in the biomedical enterprise, allowing them to connect to this ecosystem, interact with it, interact with each other. And the bottom line here is really those last two words, to create value, to extract the knowledge out of this big data. And that's what BD2K initially started as its marching orders. Increase knowledge, increase value. So what is the current model? I like to show this slide when I give talks because there are a lot of investigators out there who sit there with their work. There we go. You've got an investigator who is creating and developing data, and they keep it in their own server. Some don't even do that. They keep it on their laptop or their desktop computer. And you never see it. And the value that comes from that research is merely reflected in an extract of that, which is a publication in a journal. If the journal requires that the data go along with it, then maybe some form of it will, not in a consistent fashion or format or content, but perhaps the minimum. And if a journal doesn't require it, then all you have is the extract of the data, charts, tables, figures. And to the rest of the community and to the funders, the knowledge embedded in there is potentially lost. And so what we need to do is to break down these silos, interoperate in and between them to share the data. And some of that requires some policy changes to essentially, I don't want to say force, but in a sense, that's what you're doing, is forcing people to break down the barriers and share their data. But it will probably involve more of a cultural change. There are large projects that, starting with the Human Genome Project, that as their core operating principles had sharing at the basis of it, so that the data could be seen and analyzed by others to extract all of the available knowledge and information embedded in that data. So this model that we currently more or less are operating with is an example of data inaccessibility. So if we're going to build a digital ecosystem, I like to use this chart because it helps me to think about what is needed and how this is built up. You start with the community. The community of investigators needs to understand the need for the sharing of the data, the need to put the data into certain formats using certain principles that allow the data to be found, accessed, interoperated, and reused. There is a requirement for policy and process, and that's where the NIH comes in and other organizations like RDA and Force 11 to develop the understandings that individuals have to operate under in order to make their data accessible and shared. And of course, there needs to be a process. And infrastructure needs to be developed. And if we intersect all of this, there should be a sweet spot in the middle here where it all overlaps, where you can find access, collaborate, interoperate, compute, reuse the data. And this is where big data for knowledge comes in. B2K has tried over the last 4 years to move this forward, the building of this ecosystem. So developing the commons has involved essentially treating all products of research as digital objects. And this is not easy because a lot of investigators are caught up in an analog world where, again, a publication in a journal is the extract of the research, and that's all you see. So these digital objects need to be shared in a state that allows one to manage the data in ways that you can find it, share it, deposit it, reuse it, and this includes all aspects of the experiment, including the software, metadata, workflows, and so on. And of course, the underlying principles are those of FAIR. And if we all adhere to that, then we're all operating in the same essential universe. So the Commons Data Framework is being built as a series of layers. And each of the layers has important components that need to be assembled, developed, assembled, and put to use, and all need to be connected. And if we start with the services and the tools, you can see that there are needs for APIs, tools, workflows, services, and including here, indexing. So now we're beginning to think in terms of what BioCaddy is trying to do. There needs to be some content, and that content is the data. At least we're starting with data as the first among many digital objects. And it needs to be a compute platform. And we're talking about the cloud because that is where a lot of the handling and analysis and management of data is trending. And all of these need to be compliant with some common principles so that you can interoperate across. So building the commons involves a number of different places where you have to assemble the different parts. Already, the NIH is working on a series of pilot projects that are trying to build the framework here, exploring the feasibility of that framework, providing the data to populate it, and thus facilitating collaboration and interoperability. There are a number of supplements here. BioCaddy is involved in some of them. How do you enable investigators to gain access to this? Well, what you want to do is move it all to the cloud and allow individuals to access it in the cloud rather than to have to download things continually to their workstation or their server. And so what the NIH is exploring is a series of credits that would be connected to NIH grants that would allow one access, be it a dollar base or a time base, some aspect of a credit that allows you to work against a certain amount and do what you need to do with the content in the cloud. And a contract has been let to develop that. But there needs to be content. So what we're talking about are reference data sets. And these are large, high-impact, NIH-funded data sets and tools that are going to be made accessible in the commons through this platform in the cloud. And there are some other groups at the NIH that are working on data management, working with the Common Fund because the Common Fund has generated an awful lot of data. We've already heard a little bit about the LINCS data set, which is a Common Fund project. And in fact, BioCaddy has already indexed the links data set, so there is already this connectivity. And then something that you may not have heard of, but have interacted with indirectly. And that is a working group at the NIH, the Resource Indexing Working Group, which includes the folks in the room here who are engaged in the management of BioCaddy, and also how BioCaddy fits into the larger question of resource indexing. Vivian Manassi chairs this group, but Ian, Dawei, Allison, Eric, and Claire, who you've met many times, are the core of the management group for BioCaddy. And we work very closely with you to assure that everything is on track for the developing of indexing methods, leveraging other BD2K efforts, such as the centers and other projects. And we're also seeking to collaborate with other groups, and you're going to hear about that this afternoon, other indexing efforts that are relevant. And the main focus here has been through the BioCaddy board and through supplements. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. This chart is incredibly complicated, but it tries to show where some of the projects that are ongoing intersect with the various layers here. And the NIH community has to provide us with data, which will be indexed. And that's where BioCaddy comes in, is the indexing here. There are other institutes at the NIH which are already doing this, and these have been tried to bring in to the overall effort so that they become part of the whole, and we're not reinventing the wheel, and we're building on and leveraging off of other activities that have already been ongoing. So where and how does BioCaddy fit here? BioCaddy is studying the core components needed for data discovery index. And you're going to see a summary of all the various working groups that are working on all of these various activities that are necessary to enable the efficient indexing of data. And in fact, this is already out of date because as of yesterday, DATS 2.1 came online, thanks to Susanna and her team. But BioCaddy, of course, is working with all various components of the BioCaddy community and essentially coming up with new ideas and approaching to indexing. The prototype is out there, and 1.0 came out at the end of June, and there's a lot of feedback already, and it's being used by a lot of people. We still need to evaluate, we need metrics and so on, and started with data, but ultimately this is going to have to include indexing of other digital objects. And it will interdigitate with or become integrated with the commons as one of perhaps several indexing and certainly a search engine. So again, just tearing down the various components and focusing on BioCaddy here, all of this data can and we hope will be indexed by BioCaddy using the tools and the means developed by the core development team led by Hua and Jeff under Lucilla's direction, and will increase the ability to find and access the data in this on the compute platform as part of the commons. So the first steps have been these BD2K initiatives, the framework pilots, integration of these components, which involves the platform, the tools, search and index, and allowing individuals to access it through these credits. And the content through these reference data sets, as well as user-defined data sets. And it all needs to be tested and evaluated. We need to know whether it works, not just for the experienced bioinformatician or the producer of large-scale data, but essentially for the long tail of investigators. That is, the vast majority of the NIH-funded research is through individual R01s. It needs to work for those people as well. This just reiterates the various components. I don't have to go through that again. So in summary, what we're talking about is populating the commons making these data sets available in a common environment, cloud commons, kickstarting it with commons compliant data and tools where all adhere to a set of principles which are referred to as commons compliant, and of course underlain by the FAIR principles. And by co-locating the data and the compute power, we hope to achieve improved access, use, reuse, and sharing of all of these digital objects. And BioCaddy has a central role here in facilitating the index and search in the commons. And this is a long list of folks who are involved in it. I want to particularly highlight Vivian in the ads office. She's been the driving force behind the commons here. You, of course, know Jenny, Phil, and many of the other people in that office. There are representatives from a variety of the other institutes at the NIH, including the Common Fund, but this is the team that has been involved in management of BioCaddy and contributing to this resource indexing working group. And all of us are here, and I hope we can all interact and exchange information and thoughts about how this project is going, how it needs to go further, and how it's being perceived by the wider community. So I think we may have a few minutes for questions.